AI is pretty good. Like it's kind of helpful in like an admin way. But they said, look, man, between you and me, like I wouldn't trust it I wouldn't use it in my court case before FERC. Like I just don't trust it as yet. So we said, okay, well, let's make an AI that you can trust that provides the primary sources.
My guest today is Shahid Mahdi. Shahid's a director at energy environment intelligence provider EnerKnol. Shahid, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Nabil, so great to be here. Big fan of your podcast. I've been watching some of the episodes and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us more about the company does?
For sure. So as Nabil mentioned, Shahid Mahdi here. I'm a director at EnerKnol. So we are the market leader in energy regulatory intelligence. We have a few different things that we do, primarily our flagship product and how I'm sure many people in the audience will recognize us from is our product solution, the EnerKnol platform. It's a SaaS solution that we aim to basically consolidate the energy and environment regulatory universe into a very simple, browsable solution. We're solving a problem that our founder and CEO, Angelique Mercurio, had 11 years ago now, working in a past life on Wall Street, where she said the sheer suffocating amount of public regulation that gets pumped out, how on earth would any human fathomably keep up with it? Especially because all these dockets, bills, what have you, are public. So why isn't there a one-stop shop, simple website where you can browse all the different public agencies? Fast forward many years, fantastic team, and kind of one-on-one patented technology. The EnerKnol platform is now the market leader in delivering those insights and really just facilitating workflows, saving time above all, taking the pain out of having to sort of manually navigate a million different tabs out of the energy universe. So that's a bit on what we do, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to work in management consulting, and I can't tell you how many different firms had entire teams that were looking at different regulations, different things. And to your point, like individual clients and banks and people in the energy sector, right? Like they all had their own teams too, like doing the same thing. It's just like gathering the data and trying to analyze it. So I think it's something that maybe hindsight's 2020, but it seems like a very obvious benefit to the industry to do it in a centralized way and have it in one place. You mentioned she started at Wall Street. Was the initial target market really banks in Wall Street, or like how has that evolved over time, and what got you guys more in the energy and environment space?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So because her use case was kind of primarily pigeonholed into Wall Street, she was tasked with having to, I think, provide information to the commodities desk for them to act upon the regulation very quickly. And then there was this increasing need of people within finance, but also in peripheral fields saying, yeah, it is a pain to go to FERC.gov, and then the DOE, then EPA, then the California PUC. And so I think it kind of snowballed into this universal pain that so many different industries seem to have. And then that just snowballed into, well, actually, a lot of law firms need it. Actually, a lot of energy brokers and suppliers need it. Say what we will, but everyone needs the permits, the orders, the motions, the testimonies.
Interesting. And for the audience and also for myself, I'm always happy to play the dumb guy in the room because it's not much of an act. You have all this data from different regulatory bodies, legislative bodies, court cases, public domains. How do you go about translating that into kind of actionable insights for your client?
I would say the EnerKnol platform, it's very good at a lot of things, but it's probably the best at accounting for the discrepancies in language. And that sounds a little weird at first. What I mean by that is there is this persistent notion where California will call a concept X, and then New York will call the same concept Y, and then Texas will call the same concept Z. The alternative to the platform is going to each website, trying to learn the keywords and have this kind of very manual Sisyphean endeavor. But with the EnerKnol platform, the main tool, and arguably the flagship functionality of it, is a advanced search capability. And so we have search capabilities that for many, many years, many more customers used solely to basically identify filings, build searches on things that they really care about. They'd be able to save them, manage them, share them with their team and the platform internally. And then above all, they'd be able to track them. And when you track something on the platform, you can get real-time alerts the moment there's a new change to the criteria, the moment there's a new result or what have you. Or you can set up a schedule where you don't want to get dinged real-time every day from the utility commission and say, okay, once a week, every Friday at 1 p.m., I get a nice digest of everything that I care about. So not just like the broad news of the whole energy industry, which is no one has time to read through, but just like, okay, I only care about pipeline safety and cybersecurity. And then boom, I got the digest if there are new developments to it. There are a few other bells and whistles. We have a feature that analyzes FERC forms, which is again, a very manual process to find the key numbers from, financial statements that companies are obliged to give to FERC. And then we do have another fun feature called the policy stream, which is just very simple. It's just a feed that updates every 30 minutes. And so a lot of our finance commodities kind of on the minute kind of ticker customers really rely on. But those are, again, because it's such a wide universe, there's so many kind of different permutations of how one can even search on the platform, which is good because we want it to be this very kind of agnostic, like universal key to whatever you're interested in.
So you talked about some of the capabilities and how some of the customers are able to like quickly manage and understand what's relevant to them. I guess, can you help give a couple of examples of how a client used this to really add value to their use case?
I think one of the most common ones, and I'll take it from one of our largest customers who are, I unfortunately wouldn't be able to say their name, but they are always at FERC. They are one of the kind of top law firms in the country, if not the world. And so they've got multiple kind of attorneys and teams before FERC in DC, representing companies, representing individuals. And one of the kind of bread and butter use cases that is so simple yet so kind of effective and timeless is being able to, as the experts with the law degrees and in that world so often, they know the standardized language that FERC will publish. One such example is FERC saying before the commission. They'll often start that kind of document with before the commission, Nabil and Shahid did XYZ. One of the many users on the platform at this firm had built a search that looks for the words before the commission in the title. And then in a second row, they were able to put in a row that says, and mention of X company. And then next week, and mention of Y company. And they were able to, instead of using the FERC library, basically have a tracker on any time FERC promulgated that document type with a certain company. And so it was a really smart, airtight way of tracking what would otherwise have to be like a very manual process going into the FERC library. And you can't always look for more than one word easily there. So it would just be a bit of a hassle. That's one example. Another is every quarter, this very, very, very large utility that is a customer of ours basically works with our fantastic strategy and support team. They give us a laundry list of all these docket IDs. So, ABC 123 at New York, DEF 5 in California. And we'll work with them and sit down with them and say, let's start tracking all of these. But half of them I want tracked in real time because they're really important to us. There may be dockets about our company. And then half of them we'll track just on a kind of weekly or daily basis should there be any new notifications. So there are many different ways of extracting value. But I would say above all, there is this overarching thread of saving them time, giving them the ability to navigate all these different libraries. And one way that they do that is just coming to mind, I think is worth mentioning, is when you're on the search page on the platform, the first dropdown is all the different libraries that we have. And if you click in on any two of those, therein immediately is the value of the platform, the ability to then look at two different websites in one place. There's no other solution where you can say, I want to look at FERC, and I also want to look at the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I also want to look at the New York House of Representatives in one search. So you're able to kind of mix and match and make this sort of patchwork of different agencies and basically just look for whatever's useful to you.
Makes sense. I know you guys have been around a long time before the current age of AI and LLMs, right? But all the things you were talking about, this massive and extensive and kind of focused database and kind of understanding the relationships between them, being able to access them with search. It's like, to me, right, it all sounds like it's priming the pump for AI. And then voila, all this stuff has come. I guess, how have you guys embraced AI or even seen challenges with adopting AI in the company?
Yeah. So with AI, it's funny. I was mentioning this to one of our clients the other day, ostensibly as kind of being perceived as basically a byword for large language models. And we've been using AI in some form since we were first kind of conceived with our patented technology. It's just that now it's become more kind of synonymous with the large language phenomenon. So we've been practicing, in one respect, we've been practicing AI, grabbing all this information from day one. But with regards to the all-encompassing every industry sort of boom that AI is really promulgating, we wanted to take an approach that basically adhered to the fact that let's go to just talk to our customers instead of just throwing them a shiny new toy for them to play with. Let's actually just slow down, hear what they're struggling with right now, and then build an AI tool kind of around that, so that ensure that they feel like they're having a say in the product development And in having a say and in guiding us, they'll feel optimal value straight away. And so what we came up with is something called the EKI Assistant, which is one of a few different AI products on the platform. But the flagship is the EKI Assistant because it is an in-platform conversational chatbot in the same way that you talk to ChatGPT, Gemini, so on and so forth. It's running the latest and greatest ChatGPT 5 powered technology on the platform, but in such a way where all of its answers, its summaries, its findings, its conversations are referencing primary source documents. And so our customers are able to sleep easy at night saying, okay, I'm getting my answers from an AI, but I can see where it's getting it from. I can see the line, the passage, the author. And if I want to check it, we give a little reference drop in that says, please go ahead, check Bill 123 at the House of Representatives, and you can see the line that it's citing. Why is this? Because when we were talking to some of our biggest customers, many of whom are law firms and so on and so forth, they were saying, well, AI is pretty good. Like it's kind of helpful in like an admin way. But they said, look, man, between you and me, like I wouldn't trust it I wouldn't use it in my court case before FERC. Like I just don't trust it as yet. So we said, okay, well, let's make an AI that you can trust, that provides the primary sources. And then part of the beauty is it works in harmony with the platform because when it's providing an answer and providing a reference link, that reference link could take you to a document that you may not have been able to easily find with our regular search or with Google or with Gemini or with what have you. And then part of the big value proposition that we have is because we already have this library of 47 million filings, and we've already done the grunt work of putting the APIs and the data feeds into all these websites and agencies, we can also kind of ensure a really high quality answer. So we always do a lot of A/B testing. We found that if you ask Gemini or ChatGPT the kind of question you'd ask EKI, it'll give a good answer. I mean, it'll point you in the right way, but it'll say like, I got this from FERC.gov. I got this from the New York Public Service Commission, which is kind of putting you back to square one because then you just have to go to all these individual websites and dig for yourself. Whereas with EnerKnol, it's all kind of centralized. You don't have to, open up a million tabs or what have you. So that's one way we're leveraging AI. And another way is quite simply just using it to summarize long bills, long documents, get the key points, get out of there, which a lot of our customers need to do. And then we also have a kind of AI-based search, so which is more kind of conversational, a bit more casual. If you don't know the docket ID, or if you don't know like that kind of very jargony language, it can just, point you in the right direction. And yeah, we're building some more stuff in the future, but I can say resoundingly, the notion of an AI tool that cites documents has been received really well from a number of different industries. And I think people just sleep easier at night knowing that they know where it's coming from.
100%, right? You mentioned, law firms. Also, if you're a commodity trader and you have to make a decision based on some nuanced language in a text, like
Yes.
you probably want to double click on that and just make sure that it's not lost and that you feel comfortable before you take a big position, right? So a lot of people say like human in the loop, but I definitely think in these cases, even if it's an AI solution, just having that comfort and understanding the context of where these things came from is still super, super helpful.
Yeah, I think one of the other use cases also, I mean, the energy regulatory universe, even for someone like me that's been in it for more than 5 years, there's always new jargon and always new kind of chemicals and materials and things that I have absolutely no idea about. And we had walked through a use case with a customer around pyrolysis and this chemical recycling process and stuff that it sounds kind of funny, but like you don't know what you don't know. And so if you don't know what you don't know how to begin searching for it. Whereas the AI can be like, okay, like, please just like, can you explain like what pyrolysis even is? It's like some form of recycling. And then you can kind of go on that journey. So even from just like a knowledge sort of away from a like admin perspective, it can just be helpful in getting you in to the right kind of start. But yes, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, in these increasingly kind of high compliance industries like finance, law, anything that is obviously publicly traded was and maybe still is like something of a reticence to embrace AI like very, very wholeheartedly. We want to hold privacy, security, integrity as like the kind of the three sort of overarching qualities that guide our AI product development instead of just going 500 miles an hour for the sake of it. It's like you're not going to like ChatGPT, Gemini, like those guys are just so far ahead. And in the time that we've been talking, it probably released like Thora 6 and Banana Neo 2 and all this kind of stuff. So instead of trying to like take them on, like partner with them, we love our API with them and use it in a kind of more like ring fenced specific way.
Yeah, I think there's a ton to be said about just the capability and just to your point, like the level of speed you can get with deploying some of these things. But in my view, and in speaking with other people, I think the actual adoption limitation and enterprises getting value out of AI is more of a trust and
Ooh,
confidence in knowing how to use it
absolutely.
limitation. And so I think anchoring on those three pillars that you talked about, like, probably lead to more enterprise value in the adoption of it than just the benefits you get with speed and technology alone.
Exactly. Exactly. And the grand irony of something that is so fast is that you don't want it to be fast ostensibly, and then it takes up more time to then go back having to like
Yeah.
check the sources. Oh, did it make up that court case? Is this lawyer, did it confuse this docket with that docket? So yeah, there's a great book I had read as part of my master's called "To Save Everything, Click Here." The author's name is forgetting me. Obviously, people can look it up. But it was a fascinating book, and I love that it came out right before the whole AI boom. The sort of core thesis of it was technological innovation for the sake of it is not always a good thing. And the author had, in this kind of creative nonfiction style, compiled all these different like multi-billion-dollar stories of tech, like for the sake of it, or like implementation at too quickly a speed, actually hurting the company in very sort of material ways. So yeah, I highly recommend that book to those watching and listening. It's a good read, and I think reading it today with AI kind of taking over all of our lives will be even more kind of funny.
Yeah, we'll find the link in the author and put it in the show notes. Another thing I find fascinating, specifically with EnerKnol and your use cases, to your point, like, you are industry agnostic, right? Your commodity traders and law firms are not the most similar target markets.
Right.
I guess from a go-to-market perspective, like, how do you figure out messaging and like prioritizing different segments? Like, how do you think about that problem set?
With those two, I mean, with those two industries and others, I think specificity is always really key, because the sort of, I think, instinct for a lot of people when they see a product with 47 million filings is like, okay, that's great, in the sense that ProQuest or Google or all these databases have a lot that I know I can dip into. But often in terms of our go-to-market, we'll want to talk to them about case studies, really concrete examples where companies were able to have a really robust outcome as a result of tracking something, or a commodities firm making a very lucrative decision as a consequence of being able to keep up with the docket proceeding and then kind of hedge their risk accordingly. We always try and introduce products in such a way where we love being really close with our customers. We want them to feel like they're really special. We want them to feel like they're getting a sneak peek at a new feature before it's released to everyone else. We really absorb their feedback. And again, even with the AI, like, we could have launched an AI that is just like, okay, cool AI for the sake of it really quickly. But instead we found it's far more rewarding to take our time, listen to the use cases, hear the struggles, hear the pain. And what does that pain cost? Is the pain costing them millions of dollars a month? Is the pain one person suffocating because they're in charge of keeping up with all the regulatory stuff on the desk? Is the pain, missing out on this opportunity because they could have tracked it better? So it sounds bizarre to say, but like, we relish in hearing the pains and then making them into some kinds of solutions. In terms of like the onboarding process, when we meet with a new customer, we'll sit down with them, again, really sort of hear them out. We want to, our sales team, and my colleague and VP of Sales and Key Clients, Mason Bear, he's fantastic at approaching calls by letting the customer just speak most of the time. I think a lot of the times people get on these calls with vendors and data service providers, and it's the other person talking the whole time about how great their product is and how we can change everything. And Mason and our company has really championed this like listen first and then ask questions sort of approach. And so yeah, I think just to close that thought out, I think just we want to really be hyper specific. We don't want a one size fits all message to be diffused to the market, because we want really relish in understanding the pains, and then as a result, we relish in like really customized solutions. I think a big channel for go to market as well is our fantastic research subscriber base. So we have over 40,000 people that subscribe to just our research reports. And we've often converted a lot of customers from them reading this report and saying, okay, this is actually pretty useful. I'd love to learn more about the data that is fueling this. And because we have this comprehensive platform, we don't need to go around the web to like alter them. It's all just from one place. And then part of the beauty is, as part of this listen to customer first approach, if it's a public source that you want that we don't have, like, we'll add it. It's public, it's free. Like, it's allowed for anyone to browse. So what's stopping us from getting it? And so I think customers like that, there were certain customers who said, hey, I need this, like, there's a town court. The town is probably a population of like 200 people, but it just happens to be the closest town to this massive fracking, basin or what have you. And so quite a bit is being adjudicated through that. We said, you know what, look, it's a public office. We can go grab it and we put on the platform. An unnamed customer came to us and said, we have a use case that we haven't been able to really solve anywhere else. And we need to track all the different weights and measures of electric vehicle charging requirements in all the states. Which is like, I don't even know how you'd begin to even with AI, I don't know how you'd begin to do that. And a lot of those EV weights and measures, funnily enough, are not from laws. They're from the Department of Transportation in each state, as you'd expect. Like manages the buses, the trains, the funding, all that kind of stuff. They're all public offices. So we went on and grabbed all of them, put them on the platform. And now that customer is able to track those kinds of materials. So when we hear about those kinds of use cases, the possibilities are quite endless because we have customers tracking telecom stuff, tracking chemical stuff, tracking healthcare stuff, anything that has a regulatory labyrinth. If it's in the public domain, it's fair game for anyone, including us, to go grab and put on our platform. So yeah, it's exciting in that way, and to hear about these different use cases every day.
So you mentioned fracking, mentioned electric vehicles, you mentioned a couple different things that, there's so much going on in the energy space right now. You talked about local regulations, even towns being almost as important for some companies as national laws and regs. And you hear about the importance of getting energy, getting data centers close to energy sources from an AI perspective. And with all of these things moving, what are you seeing as the biggest disruptions or shifts in the industry right now, whether it's for EnerKnol or for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few high-level ones that I think would be beneficial to walk through. So one consequence, inevitably, that always results in a smorgasbord of new regulation is anytime the administration changes. So those kind of seismic shifts, it seems sporadic. You'd think, okay, every 4 years, that's not so much. But the after effects and how they trickle down across the months and weeks and years is really something that never other disruptions. I think one that's kind of close to my heart, but only because I have a background in cybersecurity, is probably the symbiotic relationship between energy infrastructure and cybersecurity concerns. This kind of came to a head in 2021 when Colonial Pipeline, one of the biggest pipelines in the East Coast, was hacked by kind of a consortium of a kind of Russian non-state actor group. And that sort of shifted the attention towards okay, there are 16 classified critical infrastructure sectors. Every single one relies on one of them, which is energy. You can have all the hospitals in the world, all the transportation in the world, but if you don't have electricity, you don't have water, you're in big trouble. And so one push in regulation, which I'm very pleased to see, I actually think is quite bipartisan, is this push towards securing infrastructure sectors to do with energy, updating old legacy systems where, as example, you'd have a power plant from the 1970s connected to a pipe from 2025, connected to a Windows 98 computer. And it's it costs a lot of money to kind of go through that whole apparatus and then update it holistically in one go. And so it's been great that there's a lot of cybersecurity activity there. And then I could go on about that, but I'll save the best for last, which is definitely the whole data center push. The conjoined, I think, efflorescence of small modular reactors, the nuclear space, how, Meta, NVIDIA, all the large tech suspects that come to mind are paying unprecedented amounts of billions of dollars to get the permits, get the data centers going. Reading recently that one of the NVIDIA GPUs, one of the state-of-the-art models, I think begins at that enterprise level. One of the blocks that is sold is for $515,000 a block, and these data centers are rows and cities of them. You can only imagine how much Meta with Llama, Google with Gemini, obviously OpenAI, ChatGPT is paying out no tomorrow to get ahead in this kind of arms race of AI. So with crypto, with AI, I mean, someone's got to power all of that. So it always comes back to the kind of regulatory angle. And we do have a lot of customers, some consulting firms that were looking to the platform for instances where people were residents were unhappy with the construction of data centers and what those kinds of arguments and hearings look like. Because a lot of people, as they should, they write to the Public Utility Commission or they write to the legislature saying hey, my family's lived here for 6 generations and you're building this very dystopian robotic warehouse.
The not in my backyard.
Exactly. Yeah. So the line that I use is someone's got to power all of it. So seeing where that energy generation is coming from, there was a bit of a push for hydro to help out quite a bit. There's obviously, I think, a tendency when political situations are tense to lean back on your proven weapons. And so oil and gas, coal-powered stuff is having obviously a great few years, minus a few kind of unpredictable hiccups. And then one thing I'll say, I mean, just to kind of give a comprehensive picture, I think there is a bit of a tendency with the Trump administration for people to think that renewables aren't doing well. I think everything's there's still like massive renewable projects still happening. Okay, some massive like offshore wind projects were canceled, and that was a big blow to that industry. But I think if I have my facts right, I think Texas doesn't come to mind as like a pro renewable state as such. They built like millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of solar infrastructure this year. It doesn't really get into the headlines as such, but all the bills and the regulatory documents don't lie. It's all right there for someone to see. I think I would say, not to be dramatic, rumors of renewable dearths are greatly exaggerated. I think they're still quite going strong in a way that some people probably wouldn't expect with the Trump administration, or some people don't hear about as much. But yes, but again, I think if I had to pick one, this whole data center nuclear AI push it's omnipotent. So it's going to affect every kind of industry and every peripheral, as I'm sure you see with your guests every week and every time you interview people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear that renewable is not on as stark of a decline or demise as you might make out in headlines, or maybe just because subsidy changes or whatnot. Hopefully the private investment in there is still pretty strong. I guess a couple more questions before we wrap up. You guys are doing a lot of exciting stuff, and you mentioned that you're in the process of looking at some additional products as well. What are you excited about looking at EnerKnol's growth over the next 18 to 24 months?
I think the first way is probably this push into covering many other industries. So our core philosophy is to, again, be this very comprehensive solution to the energy and environment worlds. But I think, as I alluded to before, there's nothing stopping us from grabbing all the regulatory bodies in telecoms, in chemicals, healthcare, cybersecurity. We've already started doing that quite a bit with a lot of our, like, listening to our customers and going to grab them. So doing that within the US and then also beyond. So the Middle East, Europe, we've made some inroads into Latin American sources. It would be great to kind of be like this global sort of regulatory powerhouse as well. And then I think in conjunction with that, there is, of course, endless optimism around our AI solutions, and the fact that in working with OpenAI ChatGPT, our AI assistant's only getting better and better and more accurate and stronger, looking to further celebrate the synthesis that it has with our existing search, and a few different things we're exploring on the product roadmap currently about how to make it even more interactive, make it even more optimal at recommending things to you, it having the sort of cognition to know, okay, I know Nabil is on the platform to look for electric vehicles. Let me now guide him to like all the best filings, all the best tools. So it really kind of holds your hand in a way that maybe you would not be able to sort of navigate otherwise. And then I think thirdly, I'll say as kind of a bonus one, our Visual Primer series, which is like our flagship research publication, they're getting more and more popular, and we are exploring how to make that even more useful, maybe put out some really all-encompassing kind of quarterly big reports or special editions of them, special features or case studies, webinars, kind of honestly things a bit like this where we hop on a webinar, on a podcast, and kind of walk people through them. That's been really, really well received.
Yeah, that is exciting. I guess what do you think the biggest bottlenecks would be to getting into some of those other industries? Because you've proven competence and success at going out and getting the data, right? That seems like to be a forte.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think, we to partner with our customers and see them as the experts that they are. And so I can imagine, in the same way that initially the energy and environment regulatory universe is very daunting, I imagine that not knowing much about myself, as an example, like not knowing much about like the healthcare regulatory system, that can seem pretty daunting at first. And I think knowing which agencies to go grab, understanding the frequency at which they publish things, because it may not be as often as the energy world. And also, I think just, partnering with our customers, letting them kind of be our proverbial Sherpas to sort of show us where to go and what to grab. And in exchange, we can, grab that, deliver value to them. And then I think with, of course, there's a needed level of education to really understand like foreign markets, how the regulatory cookie crumbles in all these different countries. There are rules you have to kind of understand. There are sort of the way in which things are formatted, or the way in which legislative chambers convene, their schedules. So all that kind of research is part of which we're currently doing at the moment. But I think that's part of the excitement of breaking into new markets and grabbing that information for our customers in the US and beyond.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. And Shahid, I guess, where should people go to find out more about what you're doing and what EnerKnol's up to?
Yeah, sure. So EnerKnol.com is our website, of course, that tells you a bit about the company. And then on EnerKnol.com, there's a button for a free trial of the platform, 7 days, doesn't auto-renew, and you can just jump in there, start exploring, use cases. And then, of course, once we see you come in, we have a fantastic sales team, a fantastic strategy team that can say, welcome aboard, and how can we make sure that from day one you're tracking stuff that's useful to you. So yeah, and then we've got, there's an EnerKnol YouTube page. We also own New York Energy Week, which Nabil would love to have you speak at. And New York Energy Week, we've been doing it for many years. As you can imagine, we've had, mayors, governors, CEOs, C-suite level executives every year. It's in June every year typically. So that'll be, of course, June 2026. And part of the fun of that is we get a lot of our customers to come together, talk to each other on panels, fireside chats, things exactly like this, a lot of digital apparatus stuff as well. So yeah, New York Energy Week, again, just nyenergyweek.com, and you can see more about that too.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll include the links there and for the book that we mentioned as well. Shahid, really appreciate the time and enjoyed the conversation.
Me too, Nabil. Thank you so much for having me on.